To walk the path of a medieval archer was to embrace hardship in every dimension: body, mind, and spirit. Archery in that era transcended the mere flight of arrows. It was the relentless pursuit of survival, a profession that demanded every shred of willpower and gave little in return. The real inquiry isn't how grueling it was, but whether you could endure it at all. For many, becoming an archer wasn't a matter of passion or preference. It was the lot cast for you, from the moment you could balance on 2 feet. Royal decree didn't gently nudge boys toward the bow. It thundered with the weight of law. Across England, monarchs commanded that every male from age 7 to 60 attend archery drills each Sunday after church. Refuse and you'd find yourself paying penalties or sitting in the humiliation of the stocks. Picture yourself at 10 years old, clutching a bow nearly as tall as you stand, forced to draw its string, not just once or twice, but endlessly, until your palms were raw and bleeding. To the elders, your pain was irrelevant, their rationale cold but clear. If you couldn't bend the bow, you had no place on the battlefield. Over and over rang the demand, while your muscles screamed and your fingers tore. The journey started with a small training bow, but by your early teens, the expectation was to master the longbow, a weapon demanding strength that would challenge even today's strongest athletes. Archery training was not simply about marksmanship. It was a brutal regimen to forge the powerful upper body required to draw a bow that might need over 100 pounds of force. While other children played, aspiring bowmen heaved stones, hauled weights, and repeated the drawing motion thousands of times until sinew and bone were transformed by effort. The scars of this ordeal are etched into the very bones archaeologists have found. Warped spines, monstrous left arms, spurred fingers. X-rays of medieval archers reveal left arms far thicker than their right, their very skeletons reshaped by their weapon. By 16, a fully matured apprentice could unleash a dozen arrows in a minute, striking targets 200 yards distant. Their fingers were deeply grooved, with calluses so dense they were impervious to needles. A blessing, perhaps, as medieval treatment rarely went beyond rub some earth in it and get back to work. The harshest truth of all, this childhood steeped in hardship was only the prologue. After enduring years of punishing discipline, you might imagine an archer regarded his weapon with fondness, but reality was more tangled. The English longbow was at once a masterpiece of warcraft and an instrument of constant agony. Its sheer height, sometimes over 6 feet, rivaled or eclipsed its owner. Made from supple yew, it was deceptively light to carry, until your back ached from a day's march, and it seemed weight doubled with every step. Yet the true struggle was in drawing it. Ancient bows have been measured with draw weights of 90 to 180 pounds, double or triple that of a modern hunting bow. Try raising a mid-sized dog with a few fingers, then repeat that gesture 400 times in the space of an afternoon. There was no easy technique, only brute force. The price archers paid was chronic and visible. Examined skeletons reveal enlarged joints, crushed vertebrae, and the ravages of arthritis. Some developed enormous bone spurs on their drawing hands, but kept shooting regardless of pain. Bowstring care was a daily battle in itself. Strings of hemp or flax had to be shined with wax and kept dry. Spares were carried, coiled under helmet or tucked into crevices. Sometimes, it said, even less dignified places. The bow needed dry storage or risked warping. Well-cared-for bows might still snap soon after battle began. Arrows were finicky. Ill-matched shafts lost distance or flew astray. A skilled archer fired as many as 12 arrows a minute, instinctively adjusting for wind and distance, but their art was more burden than pastime. Complete units could be fined for failing to drill a single day. Many archers spoke of their bows as spouses, both beloved and burdensome. One archer caught drinking claimed his loyalty to his bow demanded so much he could only call the ale his own at night. Still, the bow itself was only a fraction of what a medieval archer carried. To travel light was never an option. Answering war's summons meant shouldering an inventory that might shame a modern infantryman. Each archer hauled the gear for survival: the great bow, often taller than themselves, plus the true essentials. The arrows. 60 to 100 arrows, 7 to 12 pounds alone, often squashed into boots, lashed to belts, or stuck upright in the earth. Losing your stockpile in a clash meant certain death, so resourceful archers carried spare parts: arrowheads, feathers, shafts, and sometimes kits for emergency repairs, ready to fletch under fire. Bowstrings were carefully guarded, since even a soaking rain could weaken them beyond use. A wise archer kept at least 3 backups encased in waxed cloth. The trick was never running out. Some stored extras in their pouches or under helmets. Others, rumor has it, chose places best left unmentioned. With life at stake, dignity was a low price. As for armor, archers typically had the worst of it. A heavy padded jacket, maybe a battered iron cap, sometimes worn out chainmail adding further weight, and a small buckler shield. Their belts bore daggers, axes, or hammers, because stabbing was only one option. Smashing was the backup. Every pouch brimmed with food, water, spare boots, fire starters, and bits of home. Taken together, an archer might bear 60 to 80 pounds on the march. It was common to jest that archers were half man, half mule, their backs throbbing in constant protest. Any archer free from back pain, they would say, is either a corpse or a liar. Compared to this ordeal, firing arrows in battle was almost a relief. But war wasn't just the clash on the field. It was surviving the trek to get there. The journey itself often claimed lives before the first arrow flew. Days began before dawn, and luxuries such as coffee or fresh bread were distant dreams. If the night threatened, fires were forbidden. The only warmth was a cloak wrapped tightly around aching bones. Then came the march. 20, sometimes 30 miles a day, boots squelching through mud and brambles, with weather as much an enemy as any opposing army. The roads were often just gouged, rutted trails. Maps were unreliable, guides sometimes incompetent or duplicitous. A chronicler from France complained that English archers crossed his lands like a storm of locusts, their feet toughened so that stones seemed to yield. It wasn't poetry. It was grim reality. Footwear was abysmal. One thin pair of leather boots, offering little protection. When they wore out, replacements were improvised. Cloth bindings, scavenged leather, whatever could be patched together. Some aspiring archers toughened their soles by walking barefoot over gravel, or rubbing their feet with brine and vinegar. Weather wreaked havoc. Brutal sun brought heat stroke. Winter brought frostbite and misery. Rain soaked everything, ruined bowstrings, and sometimes forced armies to halt altogether. Sleep was rare and rough. Nobles might claim tents. Archers slept on the bare ground, wrapped in cloaks, easy prey for vermin. Food meant anything available. Rock-hard bread needing soaking to become chewable, dried meats as tough as buckler shields, and pilfered scraps from fields or villages. By battle's eve, archers were already half spent, but no less dangerous for their exhaustion. The ordeal of marching broke bodies but solidified resolve, forging spirits ready for whatever horror combat demanded next. In conflict, archers weren't mere bowmen. They were experts. The medieval counterparts of field artillery, laying down storms of arrows with a choreography that transformed battlefields into deadly landscapes. Shoulder to shoulder, their ranks arranged in deliberate arcs rather than straight rows, each formation calculated to maximize the deadliness of their barrage. Ground elevation, sun angle, the direction of the wind, every variable weighed and deployed. The field became a vast, living chessboard under their commanders. The killing power of the archers lay not only in their aim, but in their numbers. Imagine hundreds unleashing arrows at once, 10 to 12 per minute, multiplied 100-fold, became tens of thousands in moments, raining down like a dark storm. During great battles, 6,000 archers could pour 60,000 arrows onto the field in a 60-second span. The effect was less a skirmish than a tempest. There was nothing random to this onslaught. Against charging infantry, the rain of arrows came relentlessly, forcing men to advance into a forest of deadly shafts. Against cavalry, archers hammered stakes into the earth, a medieval hedge to break a horse's charge, and aimed not only at riders, but at the mounts themselves, inflicting terror and chaos. The arrows were swift and punishing. A single war arrow could fly at 160 feet per second and pierce even the stoutest oak, rendering mail or plate an unreliable defense. Directed by flags, horns, and drums, the archers' signals cut through the din of battle. Every shift in conditions, suddenly gusting wind, fresh rain, rugged ground, prompted instant adjustments, as though warfare was a living test of physics and nerve. Under their discipline, archers reshaped medieval combat forever. To face them was to wonder not if you would be struck, but whether you'd survive the experience at all. But even the sharpest tactics dissolved when the lines finally collapsed. When the foe closed in and the last arrow was spent, archers faced a cruel reality. Close combat, weaponless, against hardened men brandishing steel. Unlike today's soldiers who might radio for rescue, they were stranded, forced to contend hand-to-hand with adversaries burning with vengeance. Sometimes, this reckoning came quickly. A quiver was emptied in just 15 minutes of battle. No reinforcements would drop extra ammunition. When you shot the last arrow, you were just another soldier in the melee. Breached lines or overthrown positions meant archers must reach for whatever backup weapon they carried. Perhaps a dagger, good for camp chores, but hopeless against an armored knight's sword, or a striking hammer, its head designed to dent metal if you could get close enough. Small axes, adapted from wood-cutting tools, could snare a shield or find a vulnerable joint in an enemy's armor. In desperation, some turned their own longbows into makeshift staves, swinging them in self-defense, occasionally outfitted with iron tips. Artistic depictions show archers flailing at knights, sometimes tripping them, more often overwhelmed. It was David against Goliath. Archers typically wore only padded jackets, facing knights encased in masterfully wrought armor. As one chronicler put it, it was like a mouse assailing a lion, but a mouse who had already cut down the lion's kin from afar. Not all archers died in that brutal transition. Some fled. Some survived wounded. Some took up the weapons of the vanquished. But to be caught without arrows in the thick of the fight was to rely on luck as much as skill. In a heartbeat, the greatest of marksmen became the hunted, struggling simply to draw breath. Should an archer survive the bloodshed, a new ordeal awaited, one no blade could stave off. The field of medieval medicine was as much superstition as it was science, its cures as likely to kill as to heal. Even among archers, friendly fire was common. Panic and chaos meant arrows sometimes flew astray. Ironically, surgeons found it easier to treat wounds where the arrow punched entirely through flesh, as cleaning them was at least possible. Specialized tools like the crow's beak were invented to extract embedded heads, yet half of such procedures ended in failure, and often the grim end of the patient. Wounds from swords added more nightmares. The occasional clean cut would heal, but ragged gashes and shattered bones frequently led to festering infection and gangrene. The surgeon's primary weapon was wine, poured undiluted into wounds as a primitive antiseptic. If one thing united medieval practitioners and modern barkeeps, it was faith in spirits to fix anything. Needles made of animal bristle or horsehair stitched gaping injuries closed, often without sterilization. Burns and cauterization were common, with red-hot iron used to stop blood but leaving ravaged flesh. The so-called hospital was a straw mat, packed among the maimed, with cross-infection running riot. Few understood the nature of contagion. Many surgeons blamed bad air. Treatments ranged from the mild, honey, to the bizarre, animal manure. For pain, there was mostly liquor. Failing that, a leather strap for the patient to bite down upon. Many whose hands and arms were crippled never fired another arrow, reduced to lives of disability, with little solace or support. A few even mutilated their own fingers to escape the call to arms forever, weighing pain and loss against a future they could barely imagine. Assuming an archer endured all this, the drills, the marches, the conflicts, and their wounds, they would find no reward of fortune waiting. The hardship did not end with peace. Medieval archers, despite their vital services, rarely saw riches for their labor. The wages of a longbowman during the 100 Years' War might be double an average laborer's, but that amounted to enough for 2 gallons of ale, or a single tavern meal per day. They were not destitute, but hardly well off. Pay was irregular at best. Funds might dry up mid-campaign, and men often went for weeks or months without their due wages, fighting on in hope or rage. It was this consistent absence of compensation that sparked the practice of looting, officially discouraged but quietly tolerated. The bounty of the battlefield might offer more than months of honest pay. The armor stripped from a fallen knight, the serviceable boots or a stray mount, all became coin for archers whose purses lay empty. In peacetime, the prospects were even dimmer. Most archers received no payment when not on campaign, resorting to farm labor, menial trades, or hawking their archery skills at tournaments, striving for meager prizes in the kindness of strangers. If crippled in battle, a small one-off payment might be all they received, barely enough to keep them from starvation. A few loyal archers received tiny plots of land as reward, but these were rare exceptions. Retirement was a fantasy. The best plan was to avoid old age altogether. Most found themselves in their final days as day laborers or beggars, their hands that once defended kingdoms unable even to earn a proper burial, ending up in unmarked paupers' graves. Beyond material troubles, archers faced hardship in their place within society's labyrinth of hierarchy. Birth dictated status, and even the most skilled archer was usually viewed as common, too essential to ignore, too humble to honor. In peacetime, they faded back to the ranks of ordinary men, cobblers, innkeepers, grave diggers. Yesterday's reapers of death became today's bearers of ale. Their service did not guarantee respect, nor privilege. The nobility often viewed archers as coarse and uncouth, admitting their effectiveness grudgingly. One French lord, in a mixture of fear and disdain, noted archery was an unfair craft. It allowed the lowborn to strike down their superiors from afar. Among villagers, the archer inspired both awe and suspicion. Men who returned home were sometimes greeted as heroes, but also eyed warily for the violence and looting they had witnessed or committed. Whole communities enacted new rules to curb the behavior of returning bowmen. The church considered archery morally dubious, especially against fellow Christians. Papal bulls denounced missile weapons, placing archers in a spiritual conundrum, praised by kings, censured by priests. Some sought atonement through gifts to the church, others simply hoped divine mercy would match their accuracy. Women's attitudes were ambivalent. The pay of an archer made for a suitable provider, but their absence and ever-present risk made for unreliable partners. Some villages suffered higher rates of widowhood wherever archers were regularly recruited. "Till death do us part" was no idle vow. Children looked on with mixture of admiration and fear, boys dreaming of glory, but dreading the day they might be called to train. Whenever recruiters loomed, families secreted their sons away, torn between pride and the grim knowledge of what those boys may face. In the end, archers dwelled between worlds, acclaimed in conflict, overlooked in peace, their bodies perennially marked by their trade, their contributions seldom acknowledged in their daily lives. They wielded an instrument capable of changing history, braved dangers that would give pause to the bravest modern warriors, and did so for little more than daily bread. So I ask you, truly, would you have the resolve to live as a bowman of that age? If so, perhaps your spirit is rarer even than that of the most fabled knights. Before we continue, I invite you to share with us, where in the world and at what hour are you discovering this story? Your presence and your moments are cherished by us and by everyone in this growing circle. If these tales stir something within you, I hope you'll join us on the journey. Add your voice in the comments below. Become part of our fellowship by subscribing. And together, let's keep exploring the forgotten corners of the medieval world.